Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is your boy JJ, and I had recently just finished the first two episodes of the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary that was on Netflix, and so far, I am just mind boggled after what I had seen so far, even though that I had, you know, read like everything for the past years, for the past decade, to what all the evidence had claimed about Vince McMahon to what he has done in his past. I also took, put down a bunch of notes, and one of them was actually a surprise to me, that back in January 7th of 1976, the time where Bruno Sammartino, the legend, the icon, the greatest of all time, if not, well, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, Bruno Sammartino took on Larry Sabusco in 1980. Vince McMahon said that his father wants him to be the announcer for All-Star Wrestling. And that was when, during that time period, when his father was about to go to his early retirement, he didn't. Vince has said in his in his take, that Gorilla Monsoon was actually his father's right-hand man partner at that time, to who he wanted to sell the business to instead of his own son. To which that was the time where Vince was still new at the game, when he was still like the announcer, trying to get more into following his father's footsteps when it comes to wrestling, well, pro wrestling, WWF at the time. And that was 1976 was also the time of Gorilla Monsoon versus the great one, Muhammad Ali. So, yep. And that Vince has stated that, well, Vince stated that every 3 months that his dad and other stockholders started to pay him to run the business by inheriting the company to him, and his father knew he didn't want that. Well, he didn't want that to be his vision. That was Vince's idea for his vision to be WWF, to be the global mainstream juggernaut for millions of people watching, to make it public for television. As we all know, and that was when the time during the early 80s, the time when Hulk Hogan was like everywhere when it comes to merchandise deals, making like the biggest draw when it comes to professional wrestling. That's all Hulk Hogan during the 80s. But Hulk Hogan, we all know that he debuted in 1979. So, yep. And Vince, that was around the time when Vince McMahon's father, McMahon Sr., had passed away at the age of 69. Now, Vince said that he was proud of him and loved him, of course. And that his goal was to make it to the mainstream of professional wrestling for cable and to be transferred to WWE, not just as professional wrestling, but as a world entertainment juggernaut business. And that's when Cyndi Lauper, who was the executive for, I think she was like the co-executive or producer of MTV Music Television, that she was the true genius when it comes to the music industry by bringing music to WWF, for making tons of, helping Jim Johnson making like tons of iconic theme songs for different wrestlers like Dusty Rhodes, The Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Bret the Hitman Hart, and etc. And that was when that Cyndi Lauper had founded women's wrestling to have it their mainstream, along with Wendy Richter, Alundra Blaze, people like um, the iconic wrestlers from the golden era of WWF. And that was when WrestleMania was born in 1985. And so far, yep, that was how episode 1 had stated. And now for episode 2, WWF, it was claimed that Vince was caught and was exposed when it comes to WWF of steroids and drug policies, and that Hogan was exposed for the truth of, well, after Vince didn't want to spill the beans by lying and making sure that Hogan doesn't get, that Hogan doesn't spill the beans as well. And that's when Phil Mushnick, who was uncovering the truth during the headlines for WWF during that time period, trying to expose the reality to what Vince, Hulk Hogan, and the others were trying to keep hidden secret when it comes to the scandals, the steroids, and stuff like that. So yeah, this was really, they were really getting a nosedive so hard to make it really must see and very talked about. So yeah, guys, that's what's really drawn my mind, that there is so much more to this stuff that we did not know about Vince and others such as Pat Patterson, who were like top executives at the time, being involved with assaulting the ring boys that were underage. So yep, and that's why ever since the beginning of the first episode of his backstory, I talked about Vince McMahon, what his life was growing up, since I have read about what Vince McMahon's childhood was like growing up from his father, that he was, growing up in a trailer home with his mom and his stepfather, who was literally abusive to him growing up from his childhood, and that Vince had met his father until he was 13 years old, and when he was 16, he wanted to work for his father, Vince McMahon Sr., and when he was at the age of 13, 16 years old, that's when he had first met his ex-wife, former CEO, Linda McMahon, and that everything that had talked about his life so far, it was no surprise, because we all know how Vince McMahon was in WWF, transferred to WWE, and watching that documentary series so far, it had detailed to what all the former reporters and viewers had talked about of his past when it comes to the steroids scandal during like the 80s up to the early 90s, how Vince McMahon had turned WWF to a global business successful juggernaut in professional wrestling, from the indies to mainstream television, and that former Wall Street reporters such as Ted Mann, Joe Palazzo have made their statements of showing the true side of Vince McMahon to what he has done behind the scenes, backstage, of giving wrestlers steroids and stuff. But that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not actually confirming it. No, I'm not actually going that route. I'm just, staying to what they have said during their interviews in the documentary series, and that the majority of the following interviewers, including Vince, was filmed before the misconduct allegations were made publicly. So yep, it had talked about like many of the past historic stuff that Vince and the other executives like Pat Patterson and the rest was, oh man, it's just not, so far it's not gonna paint Vince himself in a very much like picture, is it? Nope. Because everything so far about all the evidence that claims, or when it comes to the allegations, the scandals, the steroids and stuff from Vince, of his character, TV character, as a business owner, to his real life persona, him being taken to court with the court jury cases, having Hulk Hogan be involved in it, because he was like the biggest star at that time period during the WWF in the 80s, and he was transferred to WCW when his popularity was like decreasing. That's where he met Eric Bischoff. He was in it. Shane McMahon was in it as well, along with his daughter Stephanie. And so far, yeah, this documentary of Mr. McMahon is wild, y'all. It is seriously wild, and that's why I'm going to keep on watching it up to episode 6, which is probably going to be where the Jeanette Grill lawsuit is going to be, talked about in the interview. So, yeah, all of it is true, y'all. So let me know how you guys feel about it. Are you guys watching it? Are you guys going to be giving out your thoughts about how you feel about the Vince McMahon documentary as well? If so, let me know how you guys feel about it in the comments down below. And yeah, I'm going to be doing more reviews on it. So, I'll catch you guys in the next video.